What's up? You're listening to GDoC Rewind from Game Devs of Color. We're digging into over a decade of incredible GDoCExpo talks and bringing some of our favorite conversations directly to your ears, featuring developers sharing real insight into making games, building community, navigating the industry, and so much more. This season, Surviving the Industry explores what it means to build a sustainable life and career in games, from burnout and layoffs to community care, resilience, and healing. Andrea Saravia Pérez is a narrative designer who got laid off in 2023 and had to figure out what came next, both professionally and personally. In this talk, she shares the framework she built to navigate hardship without burning out, including a concept called the North Star that might change how you think about where you're actually working toward. Let's get into it.
Hi everyone, welcome to Creation with Turbulence, Strategies to Foster Creativity Amidst Hardship. So without further ado, I'm just going to go over briefly the agenda. So I want to have a quick introduction to sort of like the gist of this talk, what concepts we're going to cover, those being introspection, adaptability, North Star, community. All right, so just to rip the band-aid off, doom scrolling, layoffs, personal experiences. There was a lot that was happening in 2023 and continues to happen. And with information being so accessible, we're always exposed to all of the things that are happening in the world. And it feels silly at times. I couldn't really find a different word for it. Like, how can we continue with our lives when XYZ is happening? And while I was navigating these, I wanted to kind of compile frameworks that help me navigate these situations, and hopefully they're able to help everyone listening to this talk, or just you need to kind of find ways to overcome stuff. Let's set some ground rules. So games can have generate a social impact. They're immersive. They bring players into experiences rather than just raising awareness towards an issue. And this awareness, this immersiveness can really change lives. And everyone's XYZs are going to different and ail them in different ways, and that's okay. The advice provided in this presentation is going to be very general, and I'm happy to talk to people one-on-one if they might need help with a specific thing, but I wanted to kind of keep this on a more high level. So hi, who am I? My name is Andrea, and I'm a narrative designer and social media specialist that's worked across a variety of different companies, from Fire Axis Games, Rainbow Unicorn Games, University of Baltimore, and a bunch of others. So I wanted to tackle the concepts of rebuilding, adaptability, reinvestment, and North Star when talking about overcoming difficulties and hardships in the gaming industry. What that hardship may be differs from individual to individual. I'm going to use more of like an anecdotal framework here, where for me personally, I lost my 9 to 5 healthcare stability all in a moment when I was laid off in 2023. And that made me ask 3 main questions that helped me kind of take action during the moment. What are some skills that I like? What gigs can I find right away? And how can I do so? So my North Star was kind of like this center where like it had like those 3 main things, where it's a gig that I could find quickly, that maybe featured skills that I might not have the commercial experience for, and I'm able to do so. The problem there is I was in a survival mode. There was a lot of scarcity since it was a layoff, so there's a lot of financial hardship in that. And overall, you're kind of like always in a timeline of like, I have enough for X amount of months and something needs to happen by this time. Back then, there was a bit of like a more safety net. The layoffs were not as frequent as I feel like they are now. And there was a couple of ways that I was able to kind of come up with solutions to solve them one by one. It's not recommendable to try to solve all the problems right at once, because it can get overwhelming. Going through a little bit of introspection, building community, improving myself continuously, and setting up systems and a routine that could help me stay on task was able to help me become a more adaptable person. So there was a moment where I asked, what do I really want to do? Where if finances were not a concern and I could choose any job I wanted, what would that be? What would fulfill me? What's something that I'm passionate about? And what's something that I can also do for a prolonged period of time? That's sort of like what I started framing as like a calling, where we may have very restrictive roles in the gaming industry, but I feel like when you step away from the discipline, when you step away from the title of the role, and you start thinking about what about that role calls to you, what aspects of that role resonate with you? What do you want to do continuously across the future? That's where you're able to kind of like start reassessing what is your calling and what might not be your calling. So for me, I was a narrative designer and had a lot of free time, and I didn't really have any AAA ship titles at until that point. I had to wait until February 5 for the title to be shipped. So I knew that I wanted to reveal myself and become a better team player. I wanted to be somebody that could shift to whatever needs a team needed, because I'm a bit of a helper. So to become a competent storyteller, I feel like I needed to adapt into one. And when navigating a hardship, you're not really in the mindset to be able to jump straight into action right away, even if survival requires you to. It's important to find a couple of things in order to be able to adapt to this, where layoffs can be a traumatic experience. So it was important for me to just find even one day where I could just be. I could really be introspective without any outside stressor. And then I figure, like, in order to be adaptable, I also needed to learn. I was looking at job descriptions. What are they listing that I lack? And what's within my reach that I can learn in the period of time that I have free time. Finally, there's the issue of like sustainability, where how can I ensure that the work can be sustained for a prolonged period of time? So I was identifying when was I the most productive, when did I need rest, and just getting used to like not monetizing writing, not monetizing hobbies. So in short, I identify a couple of things that bring me comfort and make it so that I am able to become a more adaptable storyteller in this case. Stable finances, mental wellness, healthy body, and strong support networks can bring somebody comfort. And I had to find one by one, how can I bring these things forward so that I would then be able to focus, where a lot of the well-meaning advice whenever somebody's affected by a layoff may be to jump straight into the job search. But I'm here to push back against that, in that it's best to kind of identify a few things, take care of yourself, and then slowly move towards adapting and learning the skills needed. So for finances, there's a lot of amazing talks about sort of like freelancing. So I'm just going to go over a very high level, where it's like, I'm encouraging everybody to really assess how much you need to live and not survive. And this is different. Don't charge less thinking that it may bring more clients. Don't lowball. Really value your labor and charge what you're worth, because that way you'll be able to sort of like have a select number of clients that are able to really fund your lifestyle, rather than like, having dozens upon dozens of projects that may not be sustainable in the long run. I was also thinking, since I've been let go, but I can now work for just about anyone. I just need to offer something to them. So what's something that I can offer of value that people perhaps are in the need of? And how can I make them find out that there is that necessity for the service that I'm offering? I narrowed it to 3 predominant services on my end, which was art commissions, narrative design commissions, and community social media. Those were the 3 ways where I thought I could sort of like grow as a storyteller, either as a visual storyteller, headspace, or written storyteller, or a more community-oriented storyteller. And then after I narrowed down the services that I was going to offer, I try to sort of like take into consideration how many people can I work with, or projects can I handle sustainably. Once I sort of like had that limit, I would have my commissions go live, and I was able to create a clear landing page that listed sort of like what people could commission me for, what my pricing and rates was, and also past projects that I had been involved with. So in order to find comfort and financial stability, still kind of like on that pillar, I also started kind of like really wondering and asking myself, like, is this place hiring, whenever I was just walking about? So if I came across a toy or something, so in this case, for example, a Lubu, it's like, okay, random question, but is Pop Mart, the company that's making them, hiring? Or if, for example, I went to an event such as PAX East, is Read Pop hiring? So start sort of like realizing, like, what are some brands, projects, or games that you interact with frequently, and try to check out if they're hiring. So you might be able to leverage that passion for the brand as a possibility into just a career. Who knows? But I recommend to just be curious and stay curious throughout the process. There's fortunately a lot of resources, such as the People and Take These, and also the National Alliance on Mental Illness, where they have a lot of workshops across the United States. That's where I'm currently based, so unfortunately I couldn't list out all of the countries. though there are similar organizations across the European Union also offering people resources, such, for example, Saving Our World is a charity that offers these. So definitely prioritize like your mental well-being whenever going through a transition period, a period of hardship, and also your health. An app that helped me a lot was Finch. It was pitched as a Tamagotchi, but in an app and for mental well-being. So you take care of a bird, and every time that you take care of yourself, the bird's also taken care of. And that was able to kind of help me just be more aware about my health and my body. And then just joining events like the game industry gathering, just really putting myself out there, even if I wasn't comfortable in the beginning, right? Because like you're just kind of like hopping a bunch of servers. I knew that I had to do that in order to sort of like become more confident, reaching out to people and just building that support network that I'm really glad that I did. I also figured that there was a lot that I had to learn because narrative design in 2025, it was a lot different than narrative design in 2022. Job listings are so much more specific, granular, and I had to, again, wonder what is within my control. I may not be able to just jump into another AAA game, right? But I can start my own games. I can release my own games. I can self-publish and work from that to get experience in some technical things that I wasn't too comfortable with in the beginning, but slowly I grew accustomed to. Sustain, that's another topic that I'm kind of like repeating a little bit, where I sort of like had to find that workflow that really sort of like matched what I needed at the moment, right? Where initially needed a lot of rest, and I figured that I was really active at like 10 a.m., for example. So whenever I was working with a client, I would sort of like voice like, hey, like this is my time zone, and then also like here are the hours where like you can reach out to me. And question that I get asked a lot during that time was, how do you get so much done? Because even though you're looking for a job, you're also freelancing. You're always trying to find the next gig. You're always like, polishing your resume. Just you are doing a lot of things while you're looking for a job. And I would just block out spurts of productivity across the day rather than like sitting down and then doing everything in one go. That may work for some people. That didn't work for me. So find out through trial and error what works for you, and then be able to sort of polish your schedule as you go. Want to remind everyone, like, we're not machines and you shouldn't earn rest. You need to find sort of like what works for you, for your body and your needs. So I recommend the Pomodoro method, which is a Pomodoro just means tomato in Italian. The Pomodoro method is where you set a timer where you have a period of productivity and then you take a break. So my Pomodoro method would be like, 1 hour sprints and then a 15-hour or 30-minute rinse and repeat. Some people do 15-minute breaks and then 45-minute sprints. There's different playlists on YouTube. So that's a skill that I wanted sort of like everybody to take away. And then another pillar that I wanted to cover in this talk is just reinvesting in yourself, in your present, in your future. How do you do that, right? And so I was thinking, how can I invest in myself as a writer? How can I invest in like some experiences that would allow me to grow? Those might look like workshops. Those might look like in-person writers' rooms. Those might look like courses. Whatever investing means, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a monetary investment. Time itself is a resource that you can also invest on watching videos online to polish your craft. So to me, by reinvesting time in myself, I feel like I was reinventing myself. The Game Developers Conference, whereby just applying to grants, such as the one that GDoC offers and Latinx in Gaming, I was able to cover that opportunity. And since the financial aspect was covered, it was more of a time investment, an effort investment on my end, but it was worth it to me because I was able to nurture connections and meet with people face to face. And that has led to like some amazing opportunities down the line. So you never know what can happen. And I always sort of like encourage kind of like reframing and thinking about time also being an investment, not just sort of like money. It was really important during these times to also invest in my own well-being. And that's something that as I've continued to teach in the University of Baltimore and mentoring other juniors, I always try to advocate for where you need to put yourself first, and that includes your mental well-being, your physical well-being, and ultimately that's going to pan out in you being able to grow a lot more rather than sort of like, accelerating or speeding up burnout. Going back to, I was bringing up in the beginning a presentation, a North Star. A North Star is like a raison d'etre. It's a reason of being. And it's the answer of a couple of questions that I place to myself. Where do I want to be? What skills will I need to have? Where do I want to work? What does a better outcome look like? And what do I consider success to be? Also, how can I reach that stage? And it's something that will look different to everybody in the same way that success looks different from person to person. A better outcome from current circumstances is going to look different from one person to the next. So there's a north sort of where I wanted to be, and then sort of like where was I currently? What skills did I have when I started out? Where can I work right now? What care do I need to have right now? And so that journey from point A to point B is sort of like what I started like outlining slowly and step by step rather than all at once. It is a purpose, a goal, a motivator, calling, whatever it might be, but it's sort of like the light at the end of the tunnel where it's like whenever you feel like the world is caving in, you're not sure how, what you're going to do next. Just taking a moment to breathe and asking yourself these questions, finding an answer for those questions on your own will be able to help in order to set you on a course to know that there is going to be a better place and you are going to be okay because everyone's going to be okay. Things will pass. So come up with a strategy around how you're going to get to your North Star. What skills can you sort of like learn online for free? What location are you in right now? What are some resources that you have locally and at your disposal? So think about all of these things when you're sort of like coming up with, a solid 1 year, 2 year, 3 year plan on like how you're going to get to your North Star because Rome was not built in a day. You don't have to sort of like, get to it right away. So I could do a whole other talk on like community, but I wanted to also touch on how important reaching out, especially like to your local game development community is. And remember that energy is reciprocal. Energy that you put out is the energy that you receive. When you help out, that energy comes back to you. Community is not just about asking, it's about showing up and helping others within your reason or within reason. And I was able to sort of build a community by posting various resources that were focused on narrative design. And a lot of narrative designers, writers, storytellers found out about me through those resources. And that's how I was slowly but surely able to build my own little corner in the internet, helping people without expecting anything back. And I just like to repeat, like within your bandwidth, since I'm somebody that likes to help everyone. And throughout sort of like the past couple of years, I had to remind myself that I can't help absolutely everyone just in my means. So yeah, overall, these may be sort of turbulent times. And I wanted to share this presentation as part anecdote and part also hear some frameworks, questions that can help people overcome and be able to sort of like find that introspection, that creative flow easier, what may be happening. So take time to rebuild yourself, adapt to the present day, and spend the necessary time and resources to grow, learn, and improve in your craft. Final concept, just the North Star, make sure you establish a clear goal. It's feasible with small steps that then lead to it rather than like broad general ones. Those can be a little overwhelming. And then strategize around that, come up with ways where you're able to like achieve those goals. Even if they're not something that people may have shared before, it's oftentimes people join the game industry, then leave it, then come back. Life is not often a very linear path. You may take a couple of side quests and side missions, but ultimately, as long as you have that clear end goal, you will get no matter what. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you're able to take away some information and resources from this talk. If you have any further questions, I'm happy to reach out and talk to everyone, but he wants to chat up.
That was Andrea Saravia Pérez on finding your footing when the industry pulls it out from under you. If you want to connect with Andrea, you can find them on Blue Sky and Instagram at @SaraviaPT. You've been listening to GDoC Rewind from Game Devs of Color. Discover more talks, resources, and upcoming events at gamedevsofcolor.org. Share this episode and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.